Okay, Kirstie, so nice to have you here
Thanks.
and for you to answer some questions. Where and what did you study?
I didn't really do any formal study to get into the industry. I'd done my HSC and I fully intended to go to university. I was going to study arts. And then I just decided, no, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to study anymore, and I kind of travelled the world. And I used to write short stories for myself. I was very interested in journalism. But the courses that they had then were not like they are now, those great comms courses or whatever. They were literally arts and literature. So I think I taught myself by going to a lot of theatre and getting really interested in sort of vintage fashion and the punk movement, and I worked in lots of bookstores and I read everything that I could possibly read. So I kind of educated myself in a pop culture sense. And then I got a job. I applied. I was working in a bookstore at the time in the city, and I saw an ad for the receptionist at Vogue. And so I applied to be the receptionist because I just thought, well, perhaps that's a foot in the door, and that's the kind of style of stuff that I would like to be writing about as opposed to newspapers. Because I'd done a work experience at the Daily Mirror that it was then, and it was obviously very much a man's world, and I realised I didn't probably want to be in the paper, in the newspaper side of things. And so when I saw the job at Vogue, I thought, oh, maybe this is the way in, and so I got the job as receptionist. Brilliant. And it went from there.
You did a fantastic job of educating yourself because your command of the English language is just so amazing.
It's reading.
Your vocab is
it's
incredible.
reading. It's just, I could say to you, I probably read every book in that store, from playwrights to poetry to, of course, I'd go through all the fashion books, and I love classical literature, and I love ancient history, and I don't like maths or science, and I love film, and I love, all that sort of stuff. So, and I had at that time boyfriends that were interested in all the alternative scene. So, I think we taught ourselves a lot. We didn't have Google, so we had to go to the film festivals and buy all the obscure books at the markets and things like that. So I think there was a lot of self-education.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
And as a 20-year-old, what aspirations did you have?
Well, I think travel was really top of my list. I knew that I liked to travel and that I liked to write. And I guess my aspirations were always to call my own shots. It wasn't, my aspirations weren't to get married and settle down, or I didn't have that dream. I had more the dream of travelling the world with the fabulous job. And I don't know that you could have even, I didn't know the job that I ended up getting, which really sort of set me out on the career path, was the job as beauty director. And I didn't even know that job existed when I was young. But had I known that, because I loved makeup, I loved magazines, I loved writing, had I known that there was such a job, there weren't many of those jobs, but there was that job, that was probably something I would have wanted to do. I think kids are a lot savvier nowadays because they know what those roles are out there, and they think, I either want that or I'm going to create my own business that does that. But in those days, I think we were a little bit more naive. And so when I discovered there was such a job as beauty editor, amazing, to be able to use all my interests really, and then hone my skills in that. And I think honing my skills as a beauty editor is what set me on the path of being an editor, because you learnt the commercial background of a lot of things. You learned how to sell something because you were selling a mascara, you're selling a fragrance, but you also did it in a way that you were making it super interesting for the reader. So it's great training ground to then, when you're an editor of a magazine, is to do that dance between the creative and the commercial. And I think beauty, for some reason, was a quicker step, not a quicker step, but a more logical step, because fashion's very subjective. Fashion is very like, I like that or I don't like that. And while it fits into a cultural tableau, beauty is business, and I think that's what really helped to elevate me in the career path.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You were the editor of Vogue for 13 years. Why did you leave?
Well, I was actually fired from Vogue, retrenched, however you want to make it, because we'd had a change of management. So this was in 2012. And I'd been with Vogue for 27 years and editor for 13, but it was licensed by News Corporation, and they got a new CEO, and he brought in a new managing director across the magazine group. And I think, I mean, that was my 7th managing director in my career, and in my career as editor. No, in my career. And it's really important if you're going to have a good what's the word that I'm trying to say? You can't really shine being an editor unless your business colleague or your managing director or CEO backs you. And it's really that you've got to be simpatico. You've got to make a really good team. So they're like, I'm here looking after the commercial, looking after the big picture. I trust you to be making the right decisions, to making the right creative decisions. You know, together we'll be a force. But if you haven't got that person who backs you, if you have to constantly prove yourself to the new person that you deserve to have that job, it can be very difficult, very fractious. And, you know, it's a highly covetable job to be the editor of Vogue. So there would be a lot of people in people's ears saying, well, I could do a better job, it was so much better, look like I could, you know. So there was always that competition around. You could feel it behind you. So I think essentially by the time I got to number 7, my luck had run out. You know, like how many more managing directors could you have to prove yourself to? And so I was ousted, and then my entire team was essentially ousted as well. It was kind of a coup, and quite odd. But, you know, looking back at it now, it's, 8 years later, I think magazines have the right editor at the right time. And, you know, as things move and change, maybe having one editor for an entirely long period is not the right thing for particular titles. And it is good to refresh and change and regroup, because there will be a new current thinking. So I'm probably more sanguine about it now. You know, it was all very dramatic. Probably what I found the most confronting during that period was that the press, there was a lot of press around it, and I don't think women's fashion magazines are taken very seriously by the sort of black and white press and, you know, the sort of more popular press. And they can tend to gloat a little bit when people lose jobs in the magazine industry. And I think that's very sad. I think there's an element of misogyny to that. And I think that, you know, anybody that loses a job or their livelihood should be treated with the same compassion and respect, no matter what industry it is. And I did find that there was a lot of gloating and, you know, but essentially it's a high-profile job, and that sort of comes with the territory. I think that now, a few years later, people are not so rocked by anything, because the magazine world's in such turmoil that that's not really big news anymore. But it was kind of big news in 2012. But now it's like magazines close left, right, and centre, editors leave left, right, and centre. It's not such a big deal. But you know, that was kind of the beginning of a big crashing wave.
Yeah. Do you think that experience changed you to be sacked?
Oh yeah, I mean they're not. It's not nice in life, you know. And I mean, if anybody that's been sacked will never tell you it's brutal. And if you ever have to sack someone, it's brutal. And especially, it happens to everybody, but it was so public. And I think that's what was probably more difficult at that time. Did it change me? Yeah, definitely it changes you. But in a way, it changed. I now think for the better, because once I left, I thought, oh, okay, what am I going to do? And I ended up going back to what I really love doing, which is writing. And even though part of me thought, I'll go back to a corporate job, I'll get another big gig, I'll get another big role, the longer I stayed out, the longer I didn't want one. And I've actually sort of, my career path has now gone in other areas where I am my own boss, and I do lots of different things. I have a suite of things that I do, so to speak, because I don't really want to be in that position ever again, to be having to report to management like that. I'm done it. I did it for ages. I did it very successfully, and I do not want to do it again.
You certainly did do it very successfully. Are you proud of your career achievements?
I am proud. Yes, I'm proud of my achievements. I think, you know, I guess from going to the Shy, coming from the Shy, being a shy girl with no formal training, and ending up being the editor of Vogue. It's quite an interesting progression, but I'm not a person who ever looks back, which is probably why I was always in magazines and journalism because I'm always looking present and forward. And I don't. It's not a thing where I would sit around and say I'm proud of myself. I think I constantly challenge myself, and I'm curious about what's next and what, listening. Look at the world today, literally today as we speak. It's in such disarray, and so I don't think you can ever rest on your laurels. You can say, yeah, I did a good job at something. Certainly, I could have done a lot of things better. But the more interesting thing to focus on is who you are now and what you can do next. Because that was great training and it gave me great contacts to be able to do better things now than simply run a magazine. There's actually a lot more to life. And so it's great to have had all that stuff under my belt and had all of those experiences. It made me a lot more sophisticated, to be honest, really. All that travel, all those people I met, all the talent that I worked with. But it's the most important thing is what you do with that knowledge bank. Because you're not going to sit around talking about the good old days, that'd be sad. You've got to take it forward.
Kirstie Clements, thank you very much.
Thank you, Selena.